So first, Lisa Crispin. She's a co-author of Holistic Testing, along with Janet, how you weave quality into your product. She also has Agile Testing Condensed, a brief introduction, more Agile testing, Agile journeys for the whole team, Agile testing, a practical guide for testers, and Agile Testing Essentials, a video course. Great stuff. She co-founded, along with Janet, the Agile Testing Fellowship. She was voted by her peers one of the most influential Agile professional persons at Agile Testing Days, which is coming up again. They're one of our sponsors. And then also along with Lisa, Janet. Janet's a testing and process consultant for Dragonfire. She works with teams transitioning to Agile development, always with quality as focus. I love it. Janet contributes to publications. She's also co-authored 5 books around holistic testing. Together with Lisa, she did found, like I said, the Agile Testing Fellowship to grow community practitioners who care about quality. So please give a warm welcome to Janet and Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say Janet has been voted the most influential Agile testing professional person by her peers twice. 2013 and then last year?
Last year. Yeah.
Only person to win it twice. So it's awesome. Oh, we have sound effects. Hooray.
Yes, with Butter, you have your effects on the screen. You can do visual reactions, such as hearts and then from time to time we can turn on a soundboard. So like this. So while Janet's setting up her screen, go ahead, click that right side of the react and go to this soundboard. Excellent.
All right. Fun stuff. All right, so I'll share my screen. Can everybody see it now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent.
All right. Well, let's get going. So I'm Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory, and we've both worked on Agile teams for at least 23 years, maybe a little longer. And early on, we met through a mutual friend and shared experiences with each other. And since then, we shared our experiences and the experiences of lots of other people around the world with testing in Agile through our books, courses, workshops, and talks like these. So I live in Vermont, USA, on a little farm with donkeys, cats, dogs, and a husband. So Janet.
I live in a few places. My home, my address is in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Western Canada, but I spend my summers in a little mountain village by a lake in a place called Windermere in British Columbia, so a little bit further west. And then winters, I try to escape winter. Kind of semi-retired. I'm going to say semi-retired. So we go south down to either Arizona or California for the winter because I'm done with snow. So let's get on with our talk.
All right. So today we're going to introduce you to the holistic testing model, and this was a brainchild of Janet's a couple years ago, and we've found since then that many teams have told us they found it really helped them confidently deliver high quality products in today's continuous world. So lots of challenges there. So we're going to walk you through that. So it's hard to talk about quality. Like, what is quality? It's something different to everybody. So Janet came up with this really great analogy, or it might be a metaphor. So if you're not a coffee drinker, I'm not a coffee drinker, think about tea or beer or some beverage of your choice. So we definitely need audience participation. So you could maybe put in the chat, which of these coffees do you think is the best? The plain black coffee, the coffee with a lot of foam, the coffee with a pretty picture on it. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I like the pretty pictures. So I often get them at conferences just to admire them.
Black coffee, straight black coffee.
Okay. All right. So, there are a lot of different preferences. Yeah, we usually get a pretty even split on this. It's kind of interesting. So how do you know which is the best? Think about why you think it's the best. Do you think about the quality of the coffee? Like, are the beans, where are they from? Are they sustainably sourced, fair trade beans? How is it roasted? How recently was it roasted or picked? What elevation did it grow? There's so many things you could be thinking about here. Yeah, there's another coffee drinker who likes the pictures. I think that's a great art that baristas do for sure. Yeah, we got a lot of thoughts about what goes into the quality.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's add something else to this discussion of quality. So now we've added a price in US dollars or maybe Canadian dollars, I'm not sure which. So given the costs or the price of the coffee, what do you think now? Is it because have you changed your mind? Anybody changed their mind? Yeah, number one's even so much better because it's cheaper. And theory of number one, I love it. But what about the service you get with the coffee or the ambiance of where it's served? Did you just stop at a roadside service station to get coffee? Are you sitting in a lovely local cafe enjoying some music and company with friends? What affects your perception of what is best? And what if you found out that all three coffees were made with the exact same roasted beans? Would that change what you'd be willing to pay? Hating people still going number one. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's certainly fair. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of things that go into thinking about quality, and keep that in mind as we continue along here. So it's like you to just all stop for a minute and think about the team or teams that you work with. Do you have conversations about what quality means to the team? What level of quality do they want? Do they have specific quality goals? So some organizations or teams use net promoter score goals based on customer surveys, or maybe service level objectives like the 5 nines of availability. Maybe they want 0 defects escape into production. Does anybody have these kind of conversations? Yay, okay. Oh, and then they put the responsibility on the product owner and the architect. Okay, we got people with a sense of humor here. So my experience has been when I was on a team where we did have these conversations, and for some reason, sometimes you can't get people to have this conversation. And we agreed upon our quality goals and committed to achieving them eventually. Those were the teams I've worked on that became high-performing teams eventually. Of course, it also depends on your business leadership. What is the business? Do they value quality? Do the executives value quality? Do they understand making the investment in quality? So there's a lot of aspects to that too, but it's definitely worth thinking about that conversation. And there are lots of types of quality: product quality, process quality. We like to think about internal versus external quality. So internal quality is how we as a team produce good quality software products. Like, for example, we have automated regression tests that provide living documentation of our system. External quality is what's valuable. Our customers are the ultimate judge of quality, right? They're seeing the system as a whole. What's quality to them? Quality to the business might mean, are we making enough money? So all these things provide value to the business in some way. The context really matters on what's important in your situation. Defining testing is pretty much just as hard as defining quality. So testing is just a huge field, and we see more teams nowadays that don't necessarily have testing specialists on the team. Everybody's doing testing, which is great, but you can't know everything about everything, and it's hard to know everything about testing, even if you are a testing specialist. But one thing we know for sure, we can't test quality in after the code is written. So that's really the bottom line. So Janet and I, just as an aside, on our agiletester.ca blog, we put together a definition of agile testing a while back. Since our books, we have 3 books about agile testing. What does that mean? So if you're interested in that, it was a community effort actually, so you can look that up. All right. So, just to paraphrase Elizabeth Hendrickson, who's the author of Explore It, a great book about exploratory testing, the main thing we want people to take away from thinking about what is testing is it's not a phase. It's an integral part of software development, along with coding, design, architecture, operations. There's a whole bunch of things that go into letting us deliver a quality product. And we have to focus on preventing defects and building quality in. And that's how we move forward. That's how we make our customers happy. So one aspect of the holistic approach that we're going to talk about is it means that regardless of your specialty, testers, product owners, analysts, programmers, operations, whoever on the delivery team is working together to produce that quality product, they are working together. They're not handing over from one role to the next. So it's a fully cross-functional team working together to produce the product. Maybe database experts, performance testing experts, whatever we need. So think about that. And Janet's going to talk about how teams can use the holistic testing model to guide them in building quality in all the way around our infinite software development lifecycle.
All right. So the life cycle, the development life cycle is, to me, it's better as an infinite loop. So this is the life cycle, kind of, it adapted over the years, kind of thing. But it's, if we think about it as an infinite life cycle, there's no stop or start, right? So we think of new changes coming in at the discover, on that kind of top left side there. So we discover, what is it? What do we want to build? It's a new idea. And then we go around the loop. When you're thinking about it, there's no time or gates for any of these stages. And I tried to put in pauses in here just to show that before you move from, say, discover to plan, and I'm going to talk in more detail about each of these, that you stop, not as a gate, but just to pause, to reflect. Are you ready to move on to the next stage? Sometimes you're going to have to go back. And the model just kind of helps us think about where we are, stay on track, and think about the testing activities that we need. The reason we chose the term holistic testing rather than continuous testing, which Dan Ashby had in his continuous testing model, it's been kind of co-opted by a lot of the automation kind of tool vendors, to say continuous means all automation. And there's so much more than that. The word agile has kind of taken a beating over the last few years, and really that's how we develop software. So it makes no sense to call it agile anymore. So holistic reflects both the whole team approach and that the testing happens throughout the life cycle. So if we look at it a little bit closer, these are activities. These are examples. Not every testing activity you could do. When you search online for a DevOps loop, you see a drawing that usually includes testing as a separate phase. And to us, that's just so wrong, because testing happens throughout. These examples, there's no rules to say this is, but from our experience, these are the kinds of testing things that we can do at each. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail now so that it makes sense. So let's jump into discover. So discover and planning. Discovery is really led by the business folks when they, when they determine if an idea has value. They're testing their ideas. Well, at least that's what they should be doing. I don't always think that they do, but you want to make sure that it has sense from a business perspective. Because if an organization doesn't have a consistent message in their vision, that kind of falls through the teams. And a lot of times that's where I see confusion, competing priorities. No, let's build this, or no, I want to build my thing, right? So they need that consistent thing. So collaborative visual techniques, they help promote lateral thinking, as Lisa likes to say, but just thinking in different ways, because we get stuck sometimes. So tools like impact mapping or maybe a high-level story mapping can help those business folks really understand what they want to do. Now, testing also happens, and we like to call it testing early, during planning. And this is where the whole team, the delivery team, would get together. Often testers can add the most value here with their critical thinking skills, asking, those what if questions, what happens if, because those help uncover risks, maybe facilitate a risk storming exercise, especially if a new feature has a lot of unknowns, helping to break down the stories, slicing features into stories so that they're more testable, asking, those questions, how am I going to test that? So there's lots of things we can be doing in our early planning. So, for example, if we were planning an app to help art museums, just something a little bit different, to design exhibits, you're going to be asking questions like, is the art framed? What are the accessibility concerns? Do we have to think about how people can see the pictures? For example, if I'm in a wheelchair, am I really going to be able to see, the Mona Lisa way up high as well? So really, what are the wall space kinds of availability? How are we going to plan that? So thinking about the what if questions are really important. So I like tools like mind mapping, probably my favorite tool of all time, story mapping, or even drawing a flow diagram. I find that breaking features into stories by drawing a flow diagram really gets the team understanding what that feature is about. And when you're drawing that flow diagram, it makes it really simple, well, simpler, to really think about the different scenarios. And those scenarios break down into stories, also break down into how we can test. So visual tools really help us do that. And this is testing early, right, in discovery and plan. Now, we need to do more testing before we start coding, because we really need to get into what the stories are. So we seek to understand. That's what I like, my phrase I like to do. And this is where practices like acceptance test driven development or behavioral driven development, BDD, these things help. Practices like example mapping. So at the end, I think we have some resources, but example mapping, Matt Wynn started a few years ago and quickly became one of my favorite tools to use. But it helps us understand the business rules. And a lot of times when we don't have BAs, business analysts on our team, people forget about business rules. And that's a great way to be thinking about testing as well. So we want to involve the domain folks, the programmers, testers if you have them, the SREs, site reliability engineers. Perhaps they can help us think about what kind of instrumentation we need to build in so that they can monitor and observe customer behavior. So there's a lot of different things to be thinking about early. This is testing our assumptions. These are testing our ideas. Even thinking about data, right? Where are we going to get our data from? Don't wait till you're in the middle of a story to be thinking about that. It's too late then. Many years ago, And this was in my pre-Agile days, I'll say. I had my boss come into me one day, and he said, Janet, how about you give your test to the programmers first? And if I had to go back to a period in time and take my words back, that would be it. Because I said to him, well, that's just silly, because then they're going to know what we're going to test. It's like, I want to trick them. And I would go back and retake that, because I have found that giving tests to the programmers is, it's just better for the whole team. Even those programmers that I maybe don't consider as good, they get to be better coders because they now are at least knowing what I'm going to test, and they're going to code for that, because there's only so many times that, they're going to give it to me and say, I'm going to say, but I told you I was going to test that. They're going to become better programmers. When I give my tests to really good programmers, they look at it as an invitation to go deeper. So I've never had an issue. So give your tests to the programmers first, right? And have a conversation with them. Now, all of this kind of testing is completed before a single line of production code is even written. The goal is on preventing defects in the code. We're wanting to make our code better. We're wanting to make our applications, our products better. Now, when we get into building, right?
But if we're about 3 minutes before it's going to kick us out, we'll have to
Okay.
restart. So I don't know if that's cut you off in the middle of build.
Thank you for the warning. I appreciate that a lot, actually, because I'd be not watching for it. All right. So I'll start this and continue after we all get logged in again. But when we're building, so this is where people think about testing most, right? We're coding and testing and automating. We're doing all of those sorts of things. Hopefully, the programmers are doing test-driven development. At the very least, hopefully they're writing automated unit tests. And not all teams do, which is kind of sad. But they also should be doing static code analysis before they check in code to make sure that they've done the things that they should be doing, the easy things. I just see that note on the chat. Educating the developers. Absolutely. Talking about risk. Really important. So, but there's a lot of other things we can do. The developers have if I've given them my tests, whether they're automated or not, and it could be as simple as a list of variations. For example, testing password. I might just give a list of things that I'm going to test. Things like, all the special characters. I'm going to test this. I'm going to test trailing and leading blanks. And maybe because I'm having this conversation, the programmers will say, hey, Janet, you don't need to test that. That will be in unit tests. And I'll go, great. We compared so I can see what you're doing. That's right. Things like the show me. How much time do we have now before I get into this story?
Minute.
1 minute.
1 minute. I'll tell a quick show me story. So show me is when a programmer says, hey, Janet, can I show you what I did? And then we go pair. Well, one day I was walking behind two programmers. They had been pairing. They always did their pair programming. And one of the developers, they didn't know I was there, but one of the developers said to the other, so are you going to check in the code now? And the one developer says, as soon as I do my Janet tests. And I kind of went, yes, because that meant that they had learned to think about testing from a different perspective from mine, but that's okay. But they were going beyond their unit tests. They started thinking about the tests from a different perspective. And to me, that was the most important thing, was just coming out of our own biases, because programmers do tend to think, and I don't blame them. I was a programmer at one point in time. You think about, how do we make it work? You're not thinking about what might not work. And it's just a bias we have. It lets them think about those other kinds of things. So exploratory testing is also part of this. And exploratory testing, I think it's pretty common these days, though I still find people thinking of it more as ad hoc testing. So exploratory testing will depend on your context. Is it going to be just a small one because the story isn't very big, or am I exploring this whole feature so it'll be much bigger? There's lots of different ways to do it. Of course, automation, and I'm not going to go into that here, but one of the exercises I like to do with teams is, I know some people like it, some people hate it, is the test automation pyramid. I like to take that into a team to say, all right, for this feature, how are we going to automate this? Do it as an exercise to say, what kinds of tests do we need to do? What kinds of tests can be automated? And what level are we going to put them at? Is it going to be unit test level, like trailing and leading blanks for passwords? Or is it going to be at the API level to test some business rules that we don't want to go into detail for each and every through the user interface? Or should we have a few workflow tests just to make sure that it works end to end, right? I like those kinds of exercises because it gets the whole team thinking about it. And then you can think about who's going to do it. User acceptance testing. Not all teams do this. But I've worked with a few teams that had to. They needed to, for whatever different reason. The goal is to bring it in as early as possible, because right before you release is way too late. So I used to bring in users into, like, every Friday to say, here's what we built this week. We were releasing on one organization every 3 months, because that was their, what's the word I want? That's as often as they wanted to have it. It was too much disruption otherwise, for many reasons. So every week we would go through. So the actual user acceptance testing right before we released it took a day. They could go through with confidence. They knew it was going. So maybe you can do it on a story level, but depends. The goal is to bring it in earlier. All right. So we've done kind of the left-hand loop. So we're going to move over to the right-hand loop, the right side of that loop. And I'm going to let Lisa take over.
Okay. So moving to the right side, we've written code, we've done a lot of testing, and we've deployed it to development and test environments. And a lot of what we see here is going to be automated, but we're going to also do human-centric testing activities. Janet mentioned exploratory testing at a story level. A lot of times the first chance we get to test at a feature level is in a more production-like environment, so we're testing pre-production environments. And there are so many testing activities, as you saw, around that loop. And this is once we have it deployed to a test environment and we have enough stories done within an epic or feature that we can do more end-to-end exploration, we get to test a lot of the quality attributes, like load testing, performance, stability, recovery. There's so many. We can't mention them all here. Some of those are going to require automation, and some of them are more human-centric. And the reason that the model separates deployment out from release is because it's where a strong deployment pipeline really shows its strength. And that deployment pipeline is really key to successfully managing production, being able to respond to production problems quickly, and to be able to achieve continuous delivery, releasing small chunks very frequently. I was just, yeah.
Sorry, there we go. We had lost the screen share for a moment. It came back.
Oh,
It's back.
Huge.
Okay, sorry. I was looking at my notes and not the screen. All right, and so I was in a meeting earlier today in the Dora community, which I highly recommend people join. The people who do the State of DevOps survey from Google Cloud. And they have a metric they call lead time. And the way they define lead time is from when you commit your code change to when those changes are available to customers, because they're trying to measure the effectiveness of the deployment pipeline and help teams identify bottlenecks in their pipeline. And maybe there's more things they could automate or avoid manage dependencies and things like that. And teams need to choose a release strategy that lets them deploy small chunks, which are lower risk, to production more frequently. So they might choose to use release feature toggles, blue-green deploys where you have 2 production environments you can flip between, canary releases where you do just certain number of customers at a time. Lots of strategies to hide changes from all or most of your customers until you completed all your testing activities, including those human-centric ones. I learned today about the Keystone strategy, where you don't use feature flags, but you have one piece that has to be there for users can actually see the changes. So lots of ways to do that. We can release it to some internal users or a few customers. We can do testing in production safely these days. We can look at production behavior, look for unexpected scenarios, unexpected errors. And if we have a fast deployment pipeline and or ability to roll changes back really quickly in a couple minutes, that means if we have a failed deployment, we can recover quickly from it. So those are all really important. And so we released our product, we've turned our feature flags on or whatever strategy we use. Our customers are now using the latest changes. Now we can observe what's happening. And this is where that instrumentation that we thought about as we were planning and building our code earlier in the cycle, this is where it comes full circle. How are the customers using our product? Are they doing what we expected them to do? Are they doing something completely crazy? What's wrong with those users? And can we detect errors perhaps before the customers start to notice them and do some rollback changes or do hot fixes so we don't even cause any customer pain because we're so quick to respond. And that's something, we can't, our test environments never look like production. We can do some testing in production that helps mitigate some risk, but if something totally unexpected happens, can we diagnose what happened, analyze what happened, and be able to know how we're going to fix it without having to go back, add telemetry to our code, and redeploy the code? I've been on teams where we had to do that, and it's really frustrating. We want to have already captured all the data, all the events that we need to see, where did a user run into trouble using our system? And we get so much valuable information, including analytics, all kinds of metrics, and we can use that to drive our next small changes to our product and create hypotheses. So a hypothesis might be, we believe if we change XYZ on this workflow, our conversion rate will go up by 20% in 2 weeks. And that's something we can measure and deploy those changes and see if our hypothesis is correct. So that learning part of this loop is really, really so important. And I see somebody asked about the Dora community. I'll put that in the chat later. All right, so summing it up, the left side is more about preventing defects in the code. The right,
there's somebody that's squeaking.
yeah.
Can you make sure you mute yourself, please?
So the left side, we're preventing defects in the code. The right side, we're observing. We may find more defects, but we're going to have the capacity to fix those as quickly as possible or roll back the changes and fix them later. It's a slower feedback loop once you get to that right-hand side. It's a more expensive feedback loop. But if we're building in the right telemetry, getting the right metrics, the right information, and the right infrastructure, then we can respond quickly to problems. And no matter what your role or specialty, I know this is a virtually agile group, so I'm guessing there are people in a lot of different roles here. You can collaborate with your team and contribute in every stage. For example, product owners probably already looking at metrics or at analytics, maybe metrics too, to see, what are the features working like we expected? Are the customers happy with them? What gaps do we have to fill? They can also learn to use observability tools, which we have now, which provide just a whole extra layer of information on how customers navigate through our web applications and other products. And everyone can get involved with designing experiments, nice, short, frugal experiments that we can get the results really quickly. Testers can collaborate with developers, site reliability engineers to do testing in production, because like I say, not everything can be tested in a test environment. Our test environments almost never look like production. So there's a lot we can do all the way around the loop, and it's really important that you stop and think, where can you get involved? We can all add value at all these different stages, I promise. It may involve pairing up with somebody to learn how to use some new tools, but it's pretty easy to do. So this is a graph that Isabel Evans showed at a conference a while back, and it shows two different products. These two different products have the same functional features, but they're aimed at completely different audiences, completely different users. So one company's users didn't care about speed. They're scared of making mistakes. They're not tech savvy. And so they really want those, the red lines there. They really want comfort, effectiveness, trust. The other users were kind of power users, and they valued being able to complete tasks quickly. They wanted flexibility, and that's the blue dashed lines you see there. The same product is not going to be able to deliver all of these things, most likely. So you have to know who your customers are and what they need. It's not a price point difference. It's a difference in quality attributes. So these two companies they're not really competing, even though they have the same product, because they have different customers with different needs. So they had to look at value and the user-based quality metrics for individual personas. They're both providing value to their customers that they're targeting. And same with the cups of coffee. The people selling that coffee are offering different value to different people. So do you know where your product stands? If you're a utility that people just have to use, they don't have a choice, they're probably going to have to stick it out no matter what. But it's, if you have an internal product that you have internal users to your business, they may be able to work around problems. But other customers out in the world these days are pretty demanding. And if they have one problem, they're probably going to abandon your product. So you really have to understand and talk about your quality needs. So speaking of quality and how to measure it and assess where you are, Janet's going to talk about the quality practices assessment model.
I'm not going to talk about it for long, just to kind of give you a quick overview here. But it's a model to help see the level of achievement from a quality perspective. So the model has 10 critical quality aspects, we're calling them. The idea is to help you figure out where you are and then think about where you want to improve, because for every team, every context, it's going to be different. Not everybody needs the same thing. And it allows you to keep reassessing over time to see if you progress, or whether you want to focus on a different aspect. So the 10 quality aspects that we define are, well, the first 3 are social aspects. So feedback loops is number 1, culture number 2, learning improvement number 3. Because I believe that without those 3 in place, it's really hard to do well in the others. The next 2 that we talk about are the development approach. So what approach have you chosen, and how do you do that? As well as quality and test ownership. To us, those are a little bit of social aspect, but some technical aspect as well, important. And then the last 5 are technical aspects. These are things you want to get good at, but they're not going to be the thing that make or break how well you're doing. So testing breadth, how well do you know how to test? whether you have a tester on your team or not. Things like code quality, technical debt, automation, and the tools. How well do you do that? Deployment pipeline. And the very last one, and the least important in our mind, is defect management. But those are all things that you can think about from a quality perspective. And there's lots of practices that go with it. We also define 4 dimensions. It's not a maturity model, by the way. I'm going to say that right off the bat. But it's just to say, where are you and where can we improve? So, beginning, are you in chaos? Or are you on, one of those innovative teams that is, on the bleeding edge kind of thing? But there's a lot of in between, and not everybody has to be on one end or the other. Most people fall somewhere in between. And that's all I'm going to say, but it's a way to measure your quality practices. Now, we're just going to finish up here and then leave lots of time for questions. A quality culture is critical. And I like to, when I go into teams, I often see that they're focused on speed. And when you do that, then you tend to accumulate, let's say, crappy stuff, technical debt, the stuff that slows you down. But when you focus on quality, learning those really good core practices, you build that solid foundation, and then the speed comes and you keep getting faster just because you don't have to build on the crappy stuff. So you want to be thinking about quality. You want to be asking those questions. Simple things like, how are we going to test it? What quality attributes are most important for this feature, for this story? How will we know when we succeeded? So we need to experiment. We need to innovate. And you have to have that psychological safety. That culture has to be there so that it's okay to fail if you're trying new things, as long as you learn fast from it. And if everybody feels valued and feels empowered, it goes well. So testing isn't going to assure quality, but if we think about it in a holistic manner, if we use our strengths to help each other, then we can be successful together, right? So if we shift our focus to testing first, to prevent defects in code, to think about the product at a system level and how the customer will experience, well, that helps to build in that quality. And our business folks, the domain experts, they help us with that. This is a picture of one of Lisa's donkeys, by the way. So our advice is have that quality conversation with your team. Think about testing holistically and really get everybody engaged, because it's important. Lisa and I wrote this little mini book. We call it a mini book because it's only 37 pages, I think. And we let people buy it for free. That's wrong. You can download it for free. If you just go to our agiletestingfellow.com website, there's a link on the very homepage, and you can download it and really think about what this means to you. How do you adapt? So feel free.
Don't even have to put your email address.
No, we don't care. It just, we wanted to get the information out, and we were too lazy to put it in a book to sell it. Yeah, and these are our resources. There's lots of our stuff that you can go and read. But at this point, I think we'll open it up for questions. So I'll stop sharing, and we have time for questions.
Absolutely. So first, I want to thank you, Lisa and Janet, for helping us understand this holistic testing model. And I would like to kick off the questions. I'll ask one. And so I'll tell you, I'm an individual contributor on a team, and I've just either seen this on YouTube or been to this session or read your book. what do I do first? Because it can be overwhelming. Like coming, like I have this whole new model for the team. Let's think differently. Like how do you suggest we bring people along gently?
Gently. um, for me, I would really think about it and focus on that testing first or early. What are the little things I can do? And one of the things that you can do is start asking questions earlier in those planning meetings. Just start asking, doing little things like show me with the programmers. And it doesn't have to be a tester that does that. Testers, programmers can do it themselves. A product owner can do that. A business analyst, when I've worked with them, hey, they can do that. So there's a lot of little things that you can do. And that's where I think one of the reasons that Celine and I put it into a book, our assessment model, so that teams can start looking and saying, where do they want to improve? Where are they in an honest kind of fashion? And look at it critically. Lisa, you got anything to add?
I don't think so. You covered it.
All right, folks. So the floor is open. You can either raise your hand to go in the queue, or just unmute to ask a question of Lisa and Janet.
Or if you're too shy to speak, you could put it in the chat.
Yes.
Donkey questions, dragon questions, those are all welcome.
Yep. We'll even answer personal ones if you want. Depends, but yeah.
I have a very practical question. We have QAers in each team, and we've just started all of us just started to understand, like, okay, we need to make this more like a team effort. This quality levels. And what we tried to do was during refinements, we started adding a section where we said, okay, so what would be the test effort for this? What would be the risk of this? And we ran into the issue that it got really hard for people to assess what the risk would be of something, or the levels that something should be tested even before something was written. Because the developer said, well, I don't know yet. I'm not sure of what I'm gonna, all the different components I'm going to be hitting with my fix, and it kind of bled to death there. So I was wondering how to better do that, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think a lot of that problem comes because as testers, we're used to, so a friend of mine, we had this long conversation one time, and she said, which I totally agree, that business analysts and testers are the side of the same coin. Business analysts have always looked at things abstractly. How are we going to do this? Whereas testers look at it because they've had the physical thing in front of them and they can go, how can I test that? But they're not used to thinking in abstract kind of a way. So if we stop thinking on how are we going to test that, like we're going to click this and click that and click that, what are we going to test? Thinking about the business rules, thinking about the scenarios, making a visual aspect of it. Because making something visual, and that's why I like the flow diagrams, it really helps you think about the scenarios. I have to, log in, but somewhere in that flow, there's a piece where I only have to concentrate on the passwords. I don't need to know how I have to enter that into the screen. I don't even need to know what screen it is. What are the rules around that? And that helps to think about things in a little abstractly too, right? So making visual helps me. Any ideas, Lisa?
I would turn it around. I mean, I think it is important. I always do ask the programmers, what do you think are the risky areas of the code that we should focus on? But I like to start out by thinking about what quality attributes are the most important to this and what are the risks of those quality attributes. So we mentioned risk storming earlier, and there's a way, that's one good way to do it. Even just brainstorming with a mind map, anything that can just get you thinking outside the box and think, gosh, when we deploy this change of production, what is the worst thing that might happen when we do? And just get started thinking about what could happen, and then orient your test strategy towards mitigating those risks. There may be things you can't test before you release, so you need to make sure you have the telemetry, the instrumentation in your code, so you can watch what happens in production and respond to it. But yeah, I would turn it around and be more proactive in thinking about what are the risks up front, and how might we together as a team mitigate those.
But there's also coding risks, which you may not
Yeah,
know
definitely.
early. And
Yeah.
that's where things like Show Me comes in handy. Asking the programmer.
Or have a programmer and a tester pair as you're writing production code.
What?
Thank you. We have a question in the queue. Hopefully they answered for you, Arthur. Maury, why don't you go ahead, unmute, and ask your question?
I hope I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Yes. I have a bit of a combo question. So I'm trying to understand. I'm not asking you for precise numbers or even ranges, but the closest you can give me, the more precise you can give me an answer, the more useful it is. I'd like to get a feel for. Let's take a team, a software team. It doesn't have to be a Scrum team, just a team of 10. On average, as far as much sense as this question could make, but on average, what would be the split of QA/testing/
Okay, I wrote a long blog post on that. And there is no magic number. There is no magic number. It depends so much on context. I've been the only tester on a team with 12 programmers, but the programmers took responsibility for writing the tests, automating the tests, doing everything. I was a consultant. But I've been on teams that are 1-to-1 ratio because of the context of what we were trying to do.
Yeah. So that's like I didn't get to ask the question yet, but thanks. The input is already very useful. So I have a bit of a hard time formulating my question, but I'm trying to get a feel for in the ideal case, as whatever the ideal case could be, or those ideal cases could be, a percentage split of people, percentage split of time spent in the course of a sprint of a month, etc. So this could be anything from 1 to half the team, or from 5% of the time to, I don't know, 30% of the time spent on QA.
I would say if you're thinking about ratios of testers to developers, that's the wrong track to go down, because you're using the testers as a safety net. We've got to build quality in. We've got to focus on those early stages that Janet talked about. I mean, the last 10 years that I was a tester on a team, I was really more of a test consultant. So certainly I did hands-on testing, but a lot of what I did was help the developers learn exploratory testing skills, because we were 2 or 3 testers for 30 developers. They had to own it. And when they do own it, all of a sudden they get a lot more interested. The other thing I would say is make sure that the skills matrix for programmers to advance in their career includes testing skills. And that's places I've worked, the things like, oh, you can have this level of exploratory testing skills to get to this rank of job title and salary. If that's not part of their career matrix, why would they be motivated to do it? So, I mean, everybody wants a high quality product, let's face it. But there are lots of things we can do to enable the programmers to think, yes, I need to write code, and the code needs to be high quality. So we have to test as well. And we have to do these sessions before we write code to make sure we're building the right thing for our customers. So there's a lot of aspects to it, but I would get away from worrying about the ratio and start thinking more about how do I get the skills we need for testing on my team. And that might be by hiring more testing specialists. It might be by having a workshop for everybody on certain types of testing. So a lot of ways to go about it.
Thank you. Just for clarity, I use the term split for a reason, not ratio, because split means you can have a person doing development and testing, and sometimes even security analysis and stuff like that. But there is a reason for using the term split. And it's just to have an idea when you do financial planning for your team. You want to do financial planning for the next 1 or 2 years when you recruit people.
That makes
ratio testing to programming. I don't
Not
think
only
there's
in general, just let's pick any case you like, perfect case in your head. Things went well as a consultant, and in your experience, just anecdotally.
It's it's really context dependent. So I worked on a team where our product was a financial services application, and it was people's retirement accounts, managing those retirement accounts, and everything to do with them. We had, just in terms of roles, we did all work together and everything, but in terms of roles, we had 3 programmers on the team, or 3 programmers on the team, and 3 to 4 testers on the team, because writing the code wasn't so hard, but testing the gazillions of scenarios involved was very intensive. Everybody on the team did do testing, but yeah, I see what you mean about the split. More of our time was devoted to testing than it was to coding. Absolutely.
Thank you, Maury. All right. Hopefully you got something from there to go from. We got a couple questions in the chat I'll read out. First was from Mike. He asked, was there any negatives, if any, may anti-patterns to creating and sharing test cases with the developers ahead of development?
I can't think of any negatives, but I don't use the word test cases because a lot of people think test case and they think, touch this button, do this, do that. When I think of giving tests to the programmers, I think more of, depending on if you can automate them, that's cool. But even if I don't have automation in place, that I could do that first, even just a list of the things that I'm going to test, the variations, because we don't know exactly how we're going to do that yet. So, but I don't see any negatives. I can't think of any.
Unless they were wrong.
Oh, if we're wrong.
But even then, it's more important to share them up front, because if the tester has a different idea of how things should work than the developer, a conversation needs to happen.
And that's happened to me many times, actually.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But like Janet says, I would say concrete examples to illustrate the business roles. And like one team I was on, we would draw back in the days we were co-located, but you could do it virtually. We drew a big mind map with our test strategy for whatever new feature we were going to work on. And that was just out for everybody to look at. And so developers could come over and look at it, and we could talk about it together. And they say, oh, I didn't even think about this. We need to make sure that we account for that in our functionality or whatever. And having those visuals, like Janet said, it just helped us have those conversations. But that's where acceptance test-driven development and behavior-driven development really add the value, because it makes sure you have those conversations at the beginning of, this is how I expect it to work. This is how you expect it to work. We better go find a product owner or somebody who knows for sure how it should work.
Thank you. All right. Flora has another question in the chat. We'll do this one, probably one more. How do you convince developers that may have worked with bad software testers in the past that software testing is a craft and it can be complex, deep, and helpful to the entire team?
You can start that one, Lisa.
I see the reason for this because, there are probably still people out there who call themselves testers, and they just sit with their manual regression testing scripts, which could be automated, and do manual regression testing. This doesn't really add a lot of value. I do think that it's really important to educate the whole team. This is why Janet and I develop courses on Agile testing for the whole team, holistic testing for the whole team, using that holistic testing model to explain we've got all these testing activities and we need to hire people with the skills. A lot of people I know in the testing space prefer to call themselves quality engineers, because they aren't just doing testing. They're adding a lot of value in a lot of different ways. Like Janet said earlier, asking the what if questions early on and guiding the team, teaching the team testing skills, bringing in practices. We're not doing a good job with our shared understanding. We're delivering stories to the product owner, which the product owner rejects because they're not what they wanted. Maybe we should try example mapping. So just helping bring in the different techniques for the team to try. It is, like I say, it is a bit more, in my view, like a testing consultant role, in addition to doing the testing. So just making the whole team has to learn how to do this together, and we have to educate the whole team, and that's an investment. If you care about quality, then you need to make that investment.
Great. All right. Our last question, we'll try to answer quickly so I can get to the sponsors too. James asks, what skills do you think a Scrum Master should develop to better understand testing?
Ooh, it's a good one. And also there's another one right below it, which is what books and courses you should take. Start with the Holistic Testing downloadable book, or Agile Testing Condensed, which is it's pretty small as well. And our course that Lisa mentioned, the Holistic Testing course, that it's given worldwide. And you can find them on the thing, but we encourage whole teams to take it together so that the team, including Scrum Masters, including product owners, actually understand how they contribute to testing as well, because everyone on the team really has to understand what that means. It's not a tester's job. It's everyone's job.
Great.
And then I want to throw out too, because most importantly, our business leaders need to understand the need for quality. And there's a book called Leading Quality by Ronald Cummings John and Oase Peer that is written with the intention of educating business executives and managers what quality is, why it matters, and why they need to make an investment, and more speaking their language. And also a very small book. So I would recommend looking for that.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you very much, Janet and Lisa, for coming today and for working us through these Agile challenges with our platform. But the platform Butter, it's great. It's fun. We're able to interact, share screens. If you want to try Butter out, they are sponsors of this meetup. There's a 7-day trial and 30% off your first 3-month subscription. Agile Testing Days Potsdam. Chris will be there. Janet and Lisa will be there. I'll be there virtually. Come join us, whether virtually or in person. While I do this, I'm actually going to turn on let's turn on that soundboard if you want to do sounds. Chris, he leads a Agile growth journeys for Scrum Masters and Agilists through the Agile Mastery Institute. He has a code here, SMP10, to get 10% off his next Scrum Mastery Pathway. Now, Scrum Mastery Pathway, I know a few people doing this, and it's great because it's a small group of people working on for over a long time on their Agile growth journey. And that's it. That's our sponsor. So once again, thank you to Lisa and Janet for sharing so much free knowledge with us here.
Thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely. Let's send them out with go ahead. Sorry, Lisa.
I was going to say, thanks for inviting us, and feel free to get in touch with us anytime. We love to talk about testing.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks.